I'm going to call to order the regular city council meeting for the city of Ridgefield. It's May 10th at 7 p.m. Mayor Regan Gonzalez asked me to announce that she's unable to be here tonight due to a work commitment and she's out of town. So I will be presiding over the meeting. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able, please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item is the open forum. We encourage residents to take part in the public comment period during meetings. To participate, you can attend meetings in person and state your comments to the council. You may email your comments by 2 p.m. before the meeting to kwynn@richfieldmin.gov or call 612-861-9711 and have them read aloud by a staff person. Or during the meeting, you may call 1-415-655-001 now and enter that meeting ID 2450-346-9390 with the password 1234, and I believe that's on the screen if you're viewing at home. Just a reminder, this is a time for the council to hear your comments or concerns, but council will not respond during the meeting. Staff may follow up if you have specific questions. When it is your turn to speak, please state your name and address, and you will then have 3 minutes to speak. We have 2 cards from people that wish to speak here in attendance, so that will allow the people that are at home, if anybody wants to call in, some time to call in. So the first person I have here is Octavio Chung Bustamante. So if you could come up to the microphone up here, and you'll state your name and address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is, thanks for having me. Thank you for letting me speak, council members. My name is Octavio Chung. My address is 4958 142nd Circle North, Hugo, Minnesota. Yeah, like I said, my name is Octavio Chung Bustamante. I work as an organizer for LAUNA, Labor's International Union in North America. LAUNA is a labor organization that seeks to advance the welfare of union and non-union construction workers in Minnesota. Our members do all type of construction, from demolition to concrete placement to asbestos removal. We represent more than 12,000 members statewide. I understand that MWF Properties is proposing an apartment project at 7700 Pillsbury Avenue South. Our members support multifamily housing construction, and we have no objection to MWF as a developer. I'm here, however, to express concern about the conduct of Stone Pro Masonry, a contractor that has previously done work for MWF, most recently at the Lexington Flats project in Eagan. Our team has here troubling allegations from Stone Pro workers of wage theft and discrimination while working for the company. We also know that Stone Pro relies heavily on H-2B guest workers visa, and our investigation found that the company might have cheated dozens of immigrant guest workers out of tens of thousands of dollars in wages. We were also told that guest workers were crowded together in a bad condition, single 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And last week I heard that Stone Pro also has a house in Hudson, Wisconsin, where they house workers. We raised our concern with past projects to MWF at a Brownsville City Council meeting in July 2021. At the meeting, a developer, the representative, told us that they were going to look into it. My question to the developer is, have they looked into Stone Pro allegations? We want to work with them to make sure irresponsible contractors are not exploiting workers in their project. We are encouraged that there are mechanisms in place here in Ridgefield to decrease the chance of wage theft on these projects, including prevailing wage and thief clawback. These tools are important to penalize those that steal from workers. Prevailing wage requirements are a critical, important tool for preventing wage theft, but not a guarantee. You need a strong enforcement. For example, in Iowa-based contractor stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from workers on the DG project in northern Minnesota. Thankfully, to the Department of Labor Industry ordered the contractor to pay nearly $315,000 in back wages. Labor standard enforcement penalty alone are not enough to stop wage theft. We need prevention to ensure that developers and their contractors will do the right thing. They need to ensure that criminal wage theft is not happening on their projects, and that when it does, workers are made whole and they stop using problematic subcontractors. I hand out some information about Stone Pro. You can see more details there, and you can also see a picture of the Facebook of the owner. The owners of the Stone Pro Facebook post about talking about illegal immigrants. That's how he put it, how they are taking work from Americans, meanwhile he hired them and exploit them.
Your time is up, so if you could finish your thought, thank you.
Yes, thank you. We ask the city of Ridgefield to closely monitor this project if approved and to use the tools that you have at your disposal to protect workers. We also ask that you make sure that the developer, MWF, shares a clear plan to prevent wage theft. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next person who has asked to speak is Greg Lemaire. Again, you have 3 minutes, and if you could state your name and your address, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Greg Lemaire. I live at 6345 Washburn, and I'm here at the suggestion of a 911 dispatcher on March 7th, Saturday, March 7th, to address the noise ordinance of Ridgefield. I've lived at 6345 Washburn for about 10 years. I live there. It's a quiet residential neighborhood. I live there because it's that. On Saturday, about 5:30, music starts booming into my house. The adjacent properties on Vincent, across our backyards, there is no alley there. It's straight open. And 2 houses down on the other side, which turns out to be 6332 Vincent, there's a loud, booming, incessant music outdoors. And there's a gathering. And I waited a couple hours hoping it would dissipate and they would cut out. It didn't. I called 911. Turned out I was not the first neighbor to complain, and the 911 dispatcher indicated that a police officer had been sent out and had indicated, in his judgment, it was not unreasonable. And I had looked up the noise ordinance 4 years ago, and I had somewhere in my mind 50 feet. She said, it's not unreasonable. And I said, is there something 50 feet? And she said, well, I'm assuming it was a young police officer, and he's used to that sort of music. And same with the young woman dispatcher who indicated to me, well, you can just shut your windows. My windows were closed. It was booming into my house. Her comment then was, well, that's not unreasonable for a summer evening. Okay, well then I look up again the ordinances, and Ordinance 932.21. No person may operate or permit use of any radio receiver, musical instrument, phonograph, stereo, or electronic equipment. Okay, so as to unreasonably disturb the peace, quiet, and comfort of any person nearby. The following shall constitute such a disturbance. A, operation of any such device within an enclosed structure, a house, between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. the next day in a manner that's distinctly audible at the property line. Or B, operation of any such device outside of an enclosed structure at any time in a manner distinctly audible at a distance of 50 feet from the device. My home, across backyards, 2 houses down, is at least 100 feet down. That's then going on to 930.31, additional restrictions. Additional. Notwithstanding any other provision of this section, no person may make, continue or cause to be made or continued any loud, unnecessary, unusual noise or other noise which unreasonably disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, repose, health, peace, or safety of others within the limits of the city.
So,
Sure.
sir, you've hit the 3-minute limit, so if you could finish your
Holy
thought,
cow.
please.
It's gone. It's gone. Lastly, point 3.3, the manager, I assume that's the mayor, shall appoint people and testing procedures. Well, my conclusion is the officer was bringing into play the wrong, incorrect criterion. It's not unreasonable. It's 50 feet. And the dispatcher did not know the ordinances either. And my stomach has been churning for the last 3 days. I'm going to have my summers ruined because people don't know the ordinance. So, to finish, I respectfully request that the city council instruct the police to instruct their officers as to what the ordinances are and to enforce them for the peace, safety, repose, etc. With multiple neighbors complaining, nothing getting done, that's not right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone who's called in for open forum? Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak? All right, thank you. Then we will have finished with open forum. Thank you to both of the gentlemen who commented tonight. Next, we're going to move on to approval of the minutes. We have the Joint City Council Planning Commission and HRA work session of April 26, 2022, and the regular City Council meeting of April 26, 2022.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary to approve both sets of minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Then we have approved the minutes. Next, we have a proclamation celebrating Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month. I believe there's no one here in the audience that is here to receive the proclamation, so I'm going to read it from up here. So, whereas Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month from May 1st through May 31st pays tribute to Asian and Pacific Americans, the fastest growing ethnic minority group in the United States of America, for their contributions to the United States of America and to celebrate the culture and history of these groups. And whereas May was designated as Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month because of the first documented arrival of Japanese immigrants to the United States on May 7, 1843, and the completion of the first transcontinental railroad on May 10, 1869, which was completed mostly by Chinese immigrant laborers, and whereas the first documented arrival of an Asian or Pacific Islander to Minnesota occurred in Duluth, Minnesota in 1875, and whereas Minnesota has long provided asylum and relocation for many Asian refugees from the Vietnamese, Laotian, Cambodians, and Hmong in the 1970s and 1980s, and Tibetans and Karen people during the 1990s. While other Asian and Pacific Islanders have immigrated to Minnesota in their pursuit of opportunities and freedom, and whereas at least 5.4% of the population in Ridgefield is of Asian or Pacific Islander origin, according to 2021 estimates by the U.S. Census Bureau, and whereas Asian and Pacific Americans have been subjected to discriminatory treatment throughout their time in the United States, including the wrongful internment of Japanese Americans during World War II and recent irrational blame for COVID-19, and whereas Asian and Pacific Americans have made the United States a better nation through their hard work, initiative, creativity, and sharing of their cultural heritage, and deserve to be recognized for their achievements and participation in our civic life. And whereas the Ridgefield Human Rights Commission supported this proclamation at its April 5th, 2022 meeting and recommended the City Council do the same. And now, therefore, I, Mary Supple, Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Ridgefield, do proclaim the month of May 2022 as Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month in the City of Ridgefield, and call on the people of Ridgefield to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies, and continue to honor the contributions of Asian and Pacific Islander Americans throughout the year. So I'm very happy that we're honoring this valuable part of our community. Do any of the other council members have anything they wish to add? All right, thank you. Next, we are going to move on to approval of the agenda.
Councilmember Troutman, I'd move the approval of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Troutman and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary to approve the agenda. Are there any comments or discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved the agenda. This evening, for the first time in a long time, we do not have a consent agenda, so we're going to move on to item number 3, and I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This item is to consider the first reading of an ordinance amending City Code Section 721 to add new subsection 721.24 related to facility requirements for bulk de-icer storage, and schedule a second reading for May 24th of 2022. As background, the MPCA issued a new small municipal separate storm sewer systems general permit on November 16th of 2020. Ridgefield was issued coverage under this permit on October 1st of 2021 and must be compliant with new permit requirements within 12 months by October 1st of 2022. This general permit requires cities to develop, implement, and enforce a regulatory mechanism which requires proper salt storage at commercial, institutional, and non-NPDES permitted industrial facilities. At minimum, this mechanism must require the following: that designated salt storage areas be covered or indoors. Designated salt storage areas must be located on an impervious surface, and implementation of practices to reduce exposure when transferring material in designated salt storage areas. The 2019 statewide chloride management plan states that winter maintenance activities are a primary source of chloride discharges into lakes, streams, wetlands, and groundwater. Salt and de-icers can enter the environment during storage, transport, and application. It only takes 1 teaspoon of salt to permanently pollute 5 gallons of water. Once contaminated with chloride, water becomes prohibitively difficult and expensive to treat for chloride removal. So this ordinance amendment will apply to all commercial, institutional, and non-NPDES permitted industrial facilities that temporarily or permanently maintain indoor or outdoor bulk de-icer storage facilities, which is more than 2 tons in solid form or 400 gallons in liquid form. It would require indoor storage whenever possible, require covered storage, require storage on an impervious surface, require best practices during transfer, including sweeping, diversions, and containment, and require solid and liquid de-icer materials to be stored separately from one another. Does staff have anything else to add on this item? Okay. Then I would make a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance amending City Code subsection 721 to add the new subsection 721.24 related to facility requirements for bulk de-icer storage, and schedule a second reading for May 24th.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Are there any comments, questions, or discussion? All right, it looks like there are not, so we'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, we have passed the motion. Next, we are going to move on to item number 4, which goes to Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Thank you. So this item is to consider a request for a comprehensive plan amendment rezoning from mixed-use neighborhood to planned mixed use, a planned unit development, a final development plan, and a conditional use permit for a multifamily development at 7700 Pillsbury Avenue. MWF Properties, the applicant, has submitted requests for land use approvals for a multifamily development at 7700 Pillsbury. The proposal consists of 55 residential units within a 4-story building. The subject property is zoned mixed-use neighborhood and is guided as medium-density residential by the 2040 Comprehensive Plan. The applicant is seeking approval of a comprehensive plan amendment rezoning to planned mixed use and a planned unit development, final development plan, and conditional use permit. The applicant is pursuing an amendment to the comprehensive plan to re-guide the site as high-density residential. The high-density residential future land use category is intended to allow for multifamily uses at a density of 35 to 100 units per acre, primarily located in areas convenient to transportation, shopping, and social services necessary to support higher concentrations of people. The proposed density of 58 units per acre would fall within the specified high-density guidelines. Additionally, the site's location within an area having high connectivity to transportation networks and amenities aligns with the characteristics envisioned for the high-density residential areas. The proposed building will be located with massing up along the 77th Street corridor and a primary entrance facing Pillsbury Avenue. The pedestrian environment along 77th is enhanced by street-level patios for first-floor units along the sidewalk. The proposed architectural design provides visual interest by way of varying materials and breaks in massing through use of building articulation. The general design language is consistent with that of recently approved projects in the city. Off-street parking and an outdoor tot lot are provided to the south of the building. Additional vehicle and bicycle storage will be provided in a basement-level garage. As proposed, the applicant will provide 5 Level 2 EV charging, electric vehicle charging stations, and 20 Level 2/3 capable stations. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the request at their April 25th, 2022 meeting. One member of the public spoke and asked for more information on the project and expressed concerns over high-density development and tall buildings. The Planning Commission discussed impervious areas, off-street parking beyond the maximum, EV charging stations, and bicycle parking. The Planning Commission unanimously approved a motion recommending approval of the project with conditions related to the aforementioned issues. These conditions are reflected in the attached resolution. Specifically, the Planning Commission recommends the conditions be applied that the 4 excess parking stalls beyond the maximum be provided as proof of parking, that at least 50% of the required EV charging stations be provided, both the installed and EV-capable levels, and that 50% of the enclosed bicycle parking racks be available generally to tenants and not tied to leased vehicle parking stalls. Proposed as a PUD, the applicant is requesting flexibility with regard to standards contained in the zoning ordinance. Flexibility is granted in exchange for efficient use of land and resources, to encourage innovation in planning and building, and for well-designed projects successfully integrated into the neighborhood. Additionally, the city's inclusionary housing policy stipulates that projects can seek code flexibility allowed through the PUD process to deliver affordable units. Staff finds the project warrants application of the PUD form of approval through use of quality architectural designs that responds to the vision and direction of the comprehensive plan and the inclusionary housing policy. The development provides a reasonable amount of amenities for residents in a site situated between the commercial areas to the east and south and the residential areas to the north across 77th Street. Furthermore, the zoning code provisions the applicant is seeking deviations from are relatively minor in nature, and staff finds that the overall design of the project meets the intent of those individual zoning provisions. The most consequential deviations relate to exceeding the off-street parking and impervious surface minimums. Staff found that the proposal reasonably balances the tension between providing for off-street parking needs and impervious coverage and its associated benefits. However, as noted in the Planning Commission's recommendation, included a condition requiring that the excess stalls be provided as proof of parking. All the requested deviations are discussed in greater detail in the required findings attachment to the report. Staff and the Planning Commission find that the proposed project meets the intent and policies of the comprehensive plan and code requirements for mixed-use development. Therefore, staff and the Planning Commission recommend approval of the project. Does staff have anything to add at this time?
Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, I will just add, because it came up at the Planning Commission, there was a discussion about the EV charging units. And in order to move the project forward, the Planning Commission added a stipulation that 50% of the charging stations, both required, installed, and capable, be included as part of the project. I do want to note that the proposal by the developer of 5 level 2 chargers and 20 level 2 or level 3 capable chargers does meet that 50% requirement of the Planning Commission. So I'm happy to talk more about that and staff's recommendation for approval of that, but I do want to note that their initial submittal does meet the desires of the Planning Commission. And then I'm happy to answer any questions. And also tonight here we have a representative of the applicant. We have Ryan Wickert with MWF Properties.
Yeah, I have 2 questions for staff. One about the 4 vehicle parking stalls as that's written. When it says shown on revised plans and constructed as reserve stalls, are they still physically going to like put where they would go and just not stripe them, or would it be proof of parking like a grassy area that could later be improved?
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, yes, that's correct. They'd be provided as a grassy area or some low-grow planting. They would not be installed as parking. It would just ensure that nothing was installed there that would prohibit them from becoming parking in the future.
Got it. My other question was about the bicycle parking. I did ask this in advance, but I just want to be super clear on it. Because the Planning Commission did have this specific provision about it not being tied to vehicle parking leases, but I am wondering about the type of rack that the applicant described installing would be one placed in front of a car hood to be blocked by a parked car. And I want to be crystal clear, would that type of thing count towards the minimum number of bicycle parking stalls?
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, the ordinance would require that any bicycle rack counted toward the requirement be accessible without moving a vehicle. So the specifics of those racks have not been determined. Yes, one that hung in front of a car and where a car would have to be moved, that would not count, but staff is still working out those details, and that will be figured out before building plans.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. That was my concern. I'm happy with the recommendation then. I do have more thoughts on the EV charging, but it's more of a discussion item, so I want to let other people ask questions.
Are there other questions? I do have one question, and I'm not sure, I didn't prepare for this ahead because it was sparked by the open forum comment. I see that we're doing part of the motion has to do with a final development plan. So I know sometimes when we do development agreements, there's language in there that has to do with like making sure that people are paid and that type of thing. Is that included in this, or is that a later stage of the discussion?
Mayor Pro Tem, no, that would be included in the development agreement. This final development plan is only a land use permit. And that standard language that goes in our contracts now will be included. The HRA will consider that as we move forward.
Thank you, that helped clarify. And then Councilmember Troutman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think I was just going to make a similar comment where the 2 organizations and the gentleman mentioned were not a part of the particular organization, but I wouldn't say concerned, but I want to make clear that we have really strong, we've made wage theft and workers' rights a really strong priority in our council and our community, and the number of workers in Minnesota that are taken advantage of and have their wages stolen from them is extraordinary. It's about 24% of workers in the state of Minnesota, and when you start selecting for things like language barriers, that number shoots up extraordinarily. And so I'm really proud of the seriousness that the city of Ridgefield has taken and the kinds of tools that we have to hold all developers, not just the one that's in front of us, all developers accountable if they fail to meet that bar, and not just themselves, but with the subcontractors that they work with. So I just wanted to share that. I don't, and I thank everybody for coming and telling this story. Everybody is welcome here. This is the people's house, but I'm proud of the opportunities we have to stand up for workers, and I'm sure we're going to continue to do that with this project too.
Are there other questions for staff? Go ahead, Councilmember Whalen.
I appreciate the comment, and I would make this is not directed at the particular developer here, but just want to express that in general, in the development world, I mean, we literally had an experience where a known labor trafficker was in Ridgefield, using a different identity. I don't know whether that developer was at fault, but just I expect us to be moving toward a system where developers saying we don't know who our subcontract is no longer acceptable, and that would like to see a higher standard. And so I appreciate everything that we've done as a city, that we've made this a priority, and would encourage both this developer and all developers we work with to step into that as well, and just up our game on our how much we're looking out for this and making sure it's prevented.
Are there other questions for staff? Otherwise, I do have one procedural question. Should this be voted on as one combination motion or three separate parts? Do you?
Mayor Pro Tem, with this kind of approval, I guess I would recommend doing three separate motions on these.
All right, thank you, that's helpful.
If I could also clarify, the resolution, if there were an amendment that we agreed to on the resolution, that should be on the third item, correct? Yeah, okay, thank you. So I actually wonder if it'd be okay, Mayor Pro Tem, if we just discuss my idea or my concern now, just because I suspect people are going to want to talk about the development globally, and I kind of don't want to cram that to the end. So I would like us to talk about the EV charging thing, and I did some handouts, which I've also provided to staff. If it would be possible for staff member to put one on the doc cam so the public could see it too. So, as Community Development Director Paleman mentioned, there was maybe a little bit of confusion in the Planning Commission meeting over what the developer was proposing and what was required. I did speak to the Planning Commission member who made that amendment request for 50%, and she was under the impression, as was I from watching the meeting, that the applicant was proposing nothing, and 50% was sort of seen as a compromise. I'm concerned about that, and I really think we should be imposing the 100% full requirement that we would impose on everything else, and there's a few reasons why I think that's important. First, and these are, I'm going to be basically reading off my handout, but just to reiterate, electric vehicles keep costs low and stable for families. They require less maintenance. We've seen a lot about gasoline prices in the news. It is a really unstable fuel cost, and they do require a lot of maintenance. They take time out of people's days to repair. And electricity prices are really stable. They have to be approved by a state commission. It is a more ongoing, affordable option for families like those who will be living here. The other thing that's big for me is that the most affordable electric vehicles you can buy right now are low range, and they're dependent on the ability to charge your vehicle at home. If you own a Tesla, you can absolutely just drive it to your office building and charge it once a week because you've got 300 miles of range. But if you look at things like, and I have a couple just examples of used Nissan Leafs that'll get you 100 miles that are great for a second car. Those get you, 100-mile range. You need to be able to charge at home. I think it is most likely that that is the type of electric vehicle you would see moderate income families buying. The third point is that the demographics anticipated in this building, 60% AMI, are pretty typical Ridgefield residents. This is not deep poverty by any means. The demographic requirement, family of four, would be $70,380 annual income. The annual income for a Ridgefield family is $86,000 on average. So it's 60% of our regional AMI, but it's 80% of Ridgefield's AMI. This is a normal demographic for Ridgefield, and if we believe it's appropriate to require EV charging, I think it's appropriate in this building as well. And then finally, this is our first project since we've approved these changes. I think we really carefully talked about the cost of building these chargers versus the benefit of that for future-proofing the buildings and for our environmental goals. And I think it would just set a bad precedent for us to not impose it in this project. So that's not a motion, it's more just a discussion item, but I'm curious what folks think about that and what the comfort level is.
Councilmember Whalen?
I would be comfortable with this. I think if appropriate, would like to hear the developer's reaction. Not necessarily that I think that will change my mind, but I guess my understanding is that the chargers and certainly the charger capable sections are really not a major expense in the big picture of a development. I agree with the points made. I also sincerely hope that this building and its the families living there are part of our community for at least a couple decades. And most of the climate math shows that we should not be using fossil fuels that long. And so obviously you can retrofit things, but with it being a brand new proposal, absolutely seems like the right thing to do at this time. And so I was not at the Planning Commission meeting, did not hear the exact discussion, but would be curious, both from staff's perspective and the developer's perspective, why what am I trying to say, an exclusion or a variance is appropriate in this instance, and what kind of added expense it would take to do 100% of the requirements.
So does staff want to speak to that, or do we want the developer to speak to it?
I was actually going to ask the developer to speak first, since it was their initial proposal that staff accepted, and I'd be happy to explain why staff accepted that, but perhaps Ryan should start.
Thank you, and if you could state your name.
Ryan Schwickert, 3251 Louisiana Avenue South, St. Louis Park, Minnesota. I'm here representing MWF Properties for the developer of this project. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the staff report and providing info to everybody. I do want to answer this question, but I also want to touch on a few things, if that's okay, just to make sure we're all on the same page with the conditions here. Regarding the electric vehicles, I guess our thought was we develop affordable housing all across the Twin Cities, southern Minnesota. And we just installed our first EV charging station in a project in Edina that opened last year. And I think we have two charging stations there. So it was kind of just, we've never had charging stations, now requiring the capability to do future charging stations, plus the 20% for level 1, 10% for level 2. It was just kind of a lot. And given the demographic and this being an affordable housing project, it was our thought that not a lot of people would have electric vehicles, but I understand it's also planning for the future and a building that'll be here for a while. So if it's important to the council that there are the maximum amount of charging stations, then we'll work to add that. But our thought was just that they would go unused, and it'd be a cost an unnecessary cost, I guess. And for affordable housing projects, it's really tough to make projects work. So trying to contain costs as much as possible is important, because there's a lot of other standards that we put into the project to make it look like a market rate apartment and make it look like a great apartment, because it is. And but at the end of the day, we have to balance. We can't just increase rents to add more costs. Market rate developers, if they add more things, they just rents help pay for it. We can't do that. So we're kind of at a limitation on what we can add. So that was kind of our thought process. But it's certainly not something that's going to kill the project if we have to, adhere to the city's EV charging station policy. Two other things I want to bring up regarding the bicycle parking racks, I guess. Appreciate you providing that clarification, but really it was just that we put all of our bike racks on our projects in the underground parking against the wall. And Planning Commission just brought up the fact that they wanted to make half of those accessible to people that didn't have a parking spot, which we're okay doing. In our opinion, it's kind of worse because you're taking bike stalls off the wall, nice and organized, and just kind of putting a bunch of bike stalls on the ground, underground parking. But again, if that intention is to make them more accessible, people that don't have parking stalls, we're okay doing that. But that was just kind of our thought behind why we didn't have it like that initially. And then finally, the proof of parking situation, there may have been some confusion. We were suggesting a 1.5 stall per unit parking, and I believe that the zoning's maximum parking is 1.375 stalls per unit, which means that we are proposing 83 stalls, and the maximum given the zoning is 75. And I thought what was supposed to happen was that we would reduce from our current plans 4 stalls and then show proof of parking to add back those 4 stalls. And the way this is written, it says that there's 4 stalls exceeding the maximum. So the way this is written, it should be 8 instead of 4. I just wanted to clarify that. Otherwise, we may be required to have 75 stalls and only allowed up to 79 versus the 83 we're proposing. And the reason we're proposing more stalls is because we have a lot of projects in the Twin Cities with this same unit makeup. We have a lot of 3 bedrooms in this project. And given a parking analysis we conducted on all of our projects, we believe that 1.5 stalls per unit, given this unit mix, is appropriate. The street to the east of us, you can only park on one side of the street. Our neighborhood meeting, we had neighbors concerned about off-street parking and parking in front of their businesses and their houses. And I promise you'll never see a developer who is requesting an increase in parking. That never happens because we're adding costs to our project, do something that gives us zero benefit. I'd appreciate if you would take that request seriously, and if we have the proof of parking, that's fine, but I just want to make sure that it's written correctly. So I apologize for talking a lot there, but I just wanted to clarify that. And to the gentleman who brought up the wage theft, I guess that's the first time I've heard of that. For our projects, like you said, we hire a contractor, they hire subs, and that's not a good excuse, I guess. But if that is happening at our projects, I'd like to talk to you afterwards and get the facts and do what I can to not allow that to happen. That's not acceptable. And, we take that seriously. I guess I'm not in a position to do anything about it right now. I didn't know what was happening. And all I can do is get your information and get the facts and try to prevent it from happening at this point. So I want to address that too.
All right.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Community Development Director Palman, could you speak to the parking? Are we approving 79 or 83, or can you clarify that?
Yes, thank you. I believe the discrepancy is that when we calculated the reduction, we left out the handicap stalls. We did not include those. We left them alone. We don't want to mess with the handicap stalls. So that's why we're suggesting that according to the Planning Commission's recommendation, we would suggest that four of the existing stalls shown on your plans be converted and only allowed back with the proof of parking. That's what the resolution is intended to say now. In terms of the request for additional parking, I'm happy to give you my opinion on that as well if you would like it, and why staff recommended initially that the parking be allowed at what their request is, but that's only if you want that. In terms of the EV charging, I'll just give a little more background from staff perspective, and I'm going to wear my community development hat and my HRA hat here. So this project is a fully affordable project. It's a tax credit project. This isn't something that we're looking at every time a proposal comes before us. I don't think this is something that we would have considered at all on a typical project where we're looking at 20% of the units being affordable or something like that. But on a tax credit project where we're squeaking in to try to get this project to work, providing 25 stalls that were either had a charger or were capable of level 2 or 3 out of 55 units seemed reasonable to us. The project is listed right now as being affordable at 60% AMI, but we're working with the developer to get 2 units at 30% and 5 units at 50%. So on a project like this where every nickel matters, we thought it was reasonable to bring it down. I completely understand that this building is going to be here for a long time, and that fossil fuel vehicles are going away. I think from our perspective, we thought by the time you got to a point where you would need that 26th stall, we would hopefully have chargers so prolifically available in our communities that instead of stopping at the gas station, you can stop at your charging station. I understand, and if your policy is, because it's the first project especially, to include this, we'll work with the developer to try to make that work and still get this deeper affordability and all of the things that we're trying to accomplish with this building.
Thank you. And you said you had additional input on the parking part?
Right. In the parking, most of our projects have studios, one bedrooms, and we're pushing for an occasional two. So our parking regulations are generally structured to that. This building has a lot of larger units. We're pushing for family units here. And so we also looked at this in terms of bedroom count. And the parking did not seem outrageous to us. It seemed very reasonable, which is why we did support the parking in excess of the maximum. We normally would not do that. I know you know our planning staff, we do not come in recommending more parking. But that's why we did in this case. It's a unique building with a lot of larger units.
All right, are there other questions before we start discussing each of the individual ones? Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, staff, for the comments. That was very helpful. Do you remember offhand or have somewhere the parking space per bedroom ratio? I know that's not how our code is written, but functionally that is relevant.
If you want to move on, I think I wrote it down somewhere, and I'll keep
Okay.
listening.
And then I do have one more numbers question. How many, if we did go with the 100% of the electric vehicle charging station requirements, do you or the developer have a guess as to what additional cost that would be? I guess I hear and recognize the concerns about, I feel like I've said a lot of negative things. I am really excited about this project overall, that it is affordable, as much deeper affordability. Certainly, I mean, even at 60%, having 3-bedroom units is huge, that we just don't have very much of that. And so I am really excited overall and would not, just feel the tension between making sure we can still do that and the charging stations we provide.
All right, Councilmember Troutman?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And then Director Paleman, could you just remind me and folks watching where we're at in the process with this development? Has the property been sold yet to the developer, or is it under contract right now? Where are we at?
Yes, Councilmember Troutman, we have a preliminary development agreement that says we will not entertain offers from other parties, but we have not sold the property yet.
Okay, great.
The development team will be applying for tax credits here in July, and we'll have to wait and see if they are successful in that application. In the meantime, we're really working on that side of the development with them too.
Very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary?
I'm just want to continue on the EV item. I'm sympathetic to the goal of balancing affordability, especially because this has been such a goal for us to have this affordable building in this location. But I want to emphasize that almost everything related to the development, you could apply the same arguments to. We could say indoor trash has been a priority for us as a city, but they could get another parking spot out of that and maybe save some money by having a dumpster enclosure and back. But we're not saying that because as a community, we've prioritized that. We do these PUD standards and we grant flexibility in return for a building that has good urban design, and there's a cost to that, and we impose that cost. And I think largely because it's new and because this is a changing market, it's tempting to say, well, EV chargers, we don't know how quickly they're going to get used. It's just not worth pushing on. And I guess I see no reason why that should be a lower priority than the many other things that create cost in a development. And certainly to reference the parking, and we can discuss, I'm open to arguments on the total number of parking and reversing the planning commission's thing. But that obviously adds cost. That adds a lot of cost. We're talking about 4 units that they're 4 or so spots over the maximum, but they're like 15 spots more than the minimum. So they're choosing to build a lot of expensive parking, and then also telling us that they can't afford to build EV charging, which is a priority for our climate priorities, and I think a priority for family budgets. So I'm not saying, they need to go down to the minimum and just build a bunch of EV chargers, but there are many choices that create cost in this. We've said as a council that it is a priority to have electric vehicle charging, and I think that we should apply that here.
Community Development Director Paleman, did you find the answer to the parking question?
I'm sorry, council members, I cannot find it right now. Ryan, do you have a number of bedrooms offhand? I'm scanning through the plans, but I can't.
It would be, apologize, take my phone up and calculate it. And get it pretty close. It would be 15 or so one bedrooms, 14 three bedrooms, and then the difference of
So while you're finishing the calculations, I do think it matters that there's more three-bedroom apartments, so you do need to have more parking for that. So I'm fine with either the planning commission recommendation or even if we did all four, but I think it's fine to have those set aside and they show approved for parking. So I'm fine that we're above the minimum on the total parking. And then after we get the answer to Councilmember Whalen's question, I was wondering numerically what the difference in this case between 50% and 100%, like how many chargers would that be?
I can answer that one easily. As it's proposed, they're proposing 25 stalls, 5 with the chargers installed, 20 capable. As required, you would need 48 stalls. That would be 7 installed, and then the balance is capable.
Okay, thank you.
And can you clarify what capable means? Is that conduit? Is that actually like everything is wired and ready to go, or?
It's everything, conduit and wire.
Okay,
Yes, it's conduit, wire, it's the breakers, it's ready to go.
okay.
This is a rough calculation, but roughly it's 1/7 of a stall per bedroom. Sorry, 0.7. Sorry,
Okay, thank you.
sorry, 0.7.
All right, are there any other questions before we start going through different motions? All right, Councilmember Whalen?
I guess I'll just say I hadn't commented on, given how you were describing the bike parking, I'm less concerned about what option works best there, as long as the way the planning commission had phrased it made it sound like you needed to like pay for a parking spot in order to put your bike down there, which I think would be bad, but how you're describing it seems fine. I'm frankly for stalls, whether it's a small grass space that is purposely not going to be used for something else or is for more stalls, does not feel terribly important to me one way or another. I would say I'm still torn on the charging stations, and I'm curious if other council members, Councilmember Hayfield or O'Leary has clearly expressed his thoughts, if other council members have anything they would like to add on that piece.
I'm also torn.
One possible compromise, if we're still looking for the difference, would be to meet the 100% for the installed and not increase the EV capable. I would be comfortable with that, and that would meet most of my concerns. So that would, I think, not reduce the cost as much as running all the wires and breakers to everything.
Actually, that would make me much more comfortable. I'm
Okay.
fine with having 7 ready to go.
Okay,
And then if there are another 25 that are that could be upgraded later,
so 25 total minus 7, right?
or, okay.
Something like that.
Right, so then, council, that would work out to be 7 installed and 18 capable. and that would get you to 25, which is slightly over 50% of the total required.
To me, that seems reasonable because I do think we're going to need them more and more as we go along. But I don't want to hold up the project and make it to the point where we can't go ahead and do it by getting all the way up to 45. That seems to be quite a number extra. I believe it was 45, isn't it?
It was 48, Mayor Pro
48.
Tem.
So yeah, that like adds a whole nother 20-some, and they would just be capable at that point. They wouldn't even be ready to go.
Okay. Councilmember Whalen, Councilmember Trotman, would you be okay with the 7 of 25?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, I'll make that with the motion, but that sounds, I mean, again, my preference would be to do everything, but I think that's a reasonable balance. In terms of the number of parking stalls, I think we do have parking maximums for a reason. I think if we wanted to transition our parking to be by bedroom, that would be fine, and that would also be to the benefit of the studio buildings we have. I don't think it's quite fair to say that our current parking things only anticipate studio and one-bedroom buildings, because I think oftentimes they require more than that, more than they really need, and as a result, they come asking for less parking. I support the Planning Commission's recommendation. It also occurs to me just logistically that potentially fewer stalls being available would also be compatible with the need to not have bike parking stalls that are blocked by vehicles, but that's not really my puzzle to work out. They can figure that out. So I don't feel super strongly, but I do think there's value in our parking maximum, and I would prefer to hold them to it, especially since they do have the option to improve them later if there's actually a problem.
All right, so at this point, is there any further discussion, or should we go with the first motion?
I will make the first motion. I move that we approve the attached resolution amending the comprehensive plan designation for the subject property from medium-density residential to high-density residential.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Hayfoot O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Whalen. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've passed the first section. Part 2.
I move we approve the ordinance rezoning the subject property from mixed-use neighborhood to planned mixed use.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Hayfoot O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Wayland. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved Part 2. Part 3.
And then I'll make this with the EV thing, but if there are further amendments to parking, we could make those as amendments to the motion. I move that we approve the attached resolution granting a planned unit development, conditional use permit, and final development plan for multifamily residential development at 7700 Pillsbury Avenue South, with the resolution modified to require 7 installed EV-capable charging stations, but retaining the overall 50% minimum of EV-capable stations.
I would second.
Okay, it's been moved with the amendment by Councilmember Hayfoot O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Troutman. Any discussion? All right, Councilmember Whalen?
I just want to clarify with staff that, does it matter if our ordinance or resolution is by a certain number of stalls versus a percentage if anything were to change with the numbers of the building?
That is a good question. I think that the number of parking stalls is unlikely to change significantly. That said, what I heard when we were discussing was, and maybe I was wrong, what I heard when we were discussing was that we were going to increase the number of installed chargers and decrease the number of capable. So they were still providing 25 overall, but more of them were installed and less were capable. Is that correct?
That was my intent, yes.
Okay, so then we don't want to say 50% because that keeps that at 20
Okay.
capable. So we'll just want to say numbers. It might just be easier to say they're required to install 7 chargers and have 18
Okay.
EV ready.
Let me just, I'm going to withdraw that motion if that's okay with the seconder and redo that. I move that we approve the attached resolution granting the planned unit development, conditional use permit, and final development plan for a multifamily residential development at 7700 Pillsbury Avenue South, with a modification to the electric vehicle charging to require 7 installed chargers and 18 EV-capable parking stalls.
And,
And I would second it.
all right. So are there any further questions or comments?
Well, maybe just touch on the development overall, since this is the last item on it. I just
Okay.
wanted to mention, because I know people have followed along with this, and there's been some disagreement about the development in general, a lot of excitement about this, and some, I don't know, maybe hand-wringing about the site. But I do just want to say, in general, I'm really excited about this development, and I think this building is in line with our broader vision for 494. It's the best land use proposal I think we've seen for the site. I also just want to remind people, because I think people come out on the site and they see 77th and it's this big wide road, and they see the block to the east, which is this kind of quasi-industrial, older commercial buildings. And I understand why people kind of think it maybe looks out of place, but it actually only has 8,700 cars a day, which, just to put that in perspective, is less than any section of Portland, Nicollet, or Lyndale Avenue. It's about half the traffic of 66, right by our biggest community park. So I think there are issues with our street that's unfortunate, we should work on over time, but I actually think this is a great site for the residential that's proposed. And I also just want to add, personally, I know this corridor can support residential because the other half of this public works site has Havenwood, which is a residential facility that my grandma lives in. I've go there every week. I talk with the residents. I've never heard a single complaint about 77th Street from those residents. And believe me, if I had a complaint to share about it, I would love to. So it's fine. It'll be a good site. I also realize that not every project is perfect for every family. Not everybody this is going to be the right fit for them, but I think for a lot of families it will be, and I'm really excited to be bringing it to Ridgefield.
Councilmember Whalen?
I would just add that as well, and it only needs to be the right place for 55 families. And yes, so I thank you. I know this has been a process. It will continue to be as we figure out what happens with the tax credit proposals, but appreciate you working through some of the messy details with us. I am, again, overall really excited about this, and certainly as it moves forward, hope that you're successful in getting the tax credits needed to fund it.
All right, Councilmember Troutman.
And I would just add, I just thank you for Director Paleman for clarifying where we're at in the process. And because, just for folks that are watching, when developers purchase property from the city, if I understand, there's an obligation for prevailing wage to be provided for the workers. And this is just a great opportunity. Again, we don't know, you don't know who the subcontractors are, but it's a great communication opportunity that while we all need to come together to make a project like this happen, and we can have tax increment financing for projects like this, that we do have really strong tools if there isn't prevailing wage in our city that's unique to our city. And so that's just not for you, but for all subcontractors, just an opportunity. Situations like this are an opportunity for us to communicate that. So I share the comments that this has been an undeveloped property for a long time, and it's a difficult property to work with. And you have put in work to find a solution that I think will be a really good benefit to our community. So thank you for that.
All right, it looks like staff wanted to add something.
Yes, thank you, members of the council. I just want to clarify that there are prevailing wage requirements on city projects that are led and bid by the city. There are not prevailing wage projects when we sell a property to a developer. There are, however, requirements in a development contract that allow us to claw back, is the term that's been used here, TIF, or withhold tax increment if there are labor violations. So we do have tools. It just doesn't happen to be this one on this particular project.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. And I also would like to say I'm very pleased that there are a number of 2- and 3-bedroom units here, because that has been a big issue for affordability for families, to find places that they can live that have enough bedrooms, because you can't have a family in a studio apartment. It doesn't work if you have several children. So having 2- and 3-bedroom options is really great. Thank you. All right, any other comments? If not, we will vote on the motion as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've passed that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, next we're going to move on to item number 5, and that goes to Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The next item is to consider a resolution providing for the sale of $10 million general obligation bonds, Series 2022A. And the Series 22A bonds will accomplish the following: provide funding for the 65th Street construction project with a $5,410,000 par bond. Debt service for this portion of the bond will be provided by an estimated annual debt service tax levy of $398,000. The estimated increase in taxes for residential property valued at $300,000 is $29.38. Providing for the funding, provide funding for the 65th Street utility improvements with a $4,590,000 par bond, and debt service for this portion of the bond will be $312,000 and will be provided by water revenues. In the fall of 2021, City Council approved the use of bonds in the amount of $11 million. That's $6.5 million for street reconstruction and $4.5 million for utility to finance the project. In order to keep the bond sale bank qualified, the debt would need to occur in 2 sales over 2 years, 2022 and 2023, or one issue of $11.4 million that would not be bank qualified, resulting in higher interest rates. With the current economic uncertainty and rising interest rates, staff recommended using $1.1 million in American Rescue Plan funding, ARPA funding, to reduce the bond issue to bank qualified threshold of $10 million. Our financial advisors, Ellers Incorporated, estimate that using the $1.1 million in ARPA funds to reduce the bond size will result in the following savings. They are as follows: to reduce the total interest costs by $903,600, to reduce the annual debt levy from $508,000 to $398,000, and to reduce the estimated tax impact on the average $300,000 home from $36.39 increase to a $29.38 increase. Council recently identified sustainable infrastructure as a strategic priority and sustainable funding as the desired outcome in the draft strategic plan. We do not currently have a sustainable funding plan for all of our operating and infrastructure needs for the next 5 years, and using a significant portion of ARPA to help address the current needs as opposed to funding additional projects is fiscally responsible. We have a we still have $2.3 million in ARPA funds to designate as part of the 2023 budget process to make progress on other strategic priorities. Does staff have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Troutman. I also wanted to let you know that Rebecca Kurth from Ellers is here as well to answer questions. This recommendation to use $1.1 million in ARPA funds did not come easily, because there are many worthy ideas for that funding. But I think that this is the most fiscally responsible choice, because it does save in $900,000 over the life of the bond. Plus, it lowers that debt service by $100,000, and that is an approximate savings each year of about 0.5 percentage point in terms of the levy. And while that might not seem like a lot, we're going to need to have a lot of those small increases in order to whittle that levy. Right now, 2023 is going to be a budget put together. It's made tougher by the fact that we've got increased costs for goods and services, and also increased labor. And so that is going to be challenging. Also, the recommendation is to use it for 65th Street. This is in the heart of our downtown. It's going to be an asset that is going to help us with a thriving downtown for years to come. And it was investing in infrastructure was always a federal goal for this ARPA plan. And so it's very consistent with that. And responsible, as I've said before. And if council chooses not to use the ARPA funds, it will make it difficult to, again, to reduce that levy increase. And we're available for.
I have comments that Mayor Rican Gonzalez has provided, and I'll wait and hold those until after someone makes the motion. Meanwhile, are there any questions for staff before we get to the motion? Councilmember Hayfoot or Leary?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm just wondering if staff could walk me through the total numbers, because I'm just a little bit confused. So the contract that we'll be looking at next is 10.1 million. It says we approved, the total here would be 10 million in the general obligation bonds plus 1.1 million in ARPA, but then it says we're not bidding or bonding 11.4 million. So 11.4, 11.1, and 10.1. Where do those three numbers, or how do they relate? Or more specifically, more importantly, where is the $1 million between the bonding plus ARPA and the contract? Where does that other $1 million go?
I'm not understanding the question.
So did you understand me better? Translate?
Yes, as I understand, we've already spent at least $1 million on all of the consulting and design and all of that. That's
Okay.
the gap.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem and council members, if you want to, the sources and uses for the project are attached to the next item.
Okay.
And so you can see how it all splits out there. And I think we did include the assumption of the ARPA in that one too. Yep.
Okay.
So, yes, we've spent a lot of money on design up till now, and then
Got it.
we'll have a consultant deliver the project as well. But the contract is, I think it's 10.7. I'd have to look at the next agenda item.
It was
but-
10.1 something, but anyway,
Yeah,
just to
so,
be clear,
yeah,
that number is just to
it all
build
adds
it.
up to 12
Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
12.9 million for the project.
And then just a comment on this, because I was a little bit, I guess, uncomfortable with the idea of spending this kind of one-time ARPA money at first. I'm grateful to the city manager for kind of walking me through this, and particularly seeing, although we have no idea how we will spend the rest of it, that a lot of the potential other funding needs are also things we may end up bonding for. So to me, it does feel like a good move, just that we're trading some money now for other things that we may bond for anyway. So doing this now makes sense to me, to save interest on a known project. And it doesn't feel like we're giving up huge opportunities, even though there are other great ideas on how to spend the remaining ARPA money. So I like the staff recommendation.
All right, are there any other questions before we move on to actually having a discussion after the motion? Did you have a question?
I had a comment, but only as to form, not as to substance. I just wanted to thank our staff because, and I'm for all our brave souls that are listening through this and eyes are not glazing over. Stay with us. But one thing that I just wanted to comment on that I really appreciated when talking about the increase, talking about what the cost was to a homeowner that has a home of about $300,000. Of course, not everybody in Ridgefield owns a home that's worth $300,000, but it takes an abstract number and makes it concrete for community in a way that I think you don't have to have an accounting degree to understand, oh, that's how this impacts me personally. So I just, taking care to explain things and make things plain for a community is really important. So I just, without commenting on anything, I just wanted to, good memo. Good, really appreciate that.
All right, any other questions to clarify? And then we'll get into the discussion after the motion.
So then I would move that we approve the attached resolution providing for the sale of $10 million general obligation bonds, Series 2022A.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Troutman and seconded by Councilmember Hayfoot O'Leary. Mayor Regan Gonzalez sent me the following communication, and she asked that I read it. So now that we're in the discussion portion, I'm going to go through this. It says, to the Ridgefield City Council. Since I am out of town for work and cannot attend our council's meeting tonight, I have asked Mayor Pro Tem Supple to please share my comments on agenda item number 5, related to the sale of $10 million of general obligation bond series 2022A. I wholeheartedly support approving the resolution that includes contributing $1.1 million in American Rescue Plan or ARPA funding to reduce the bond issue to the bank qualified threshold of $10 million for several reasons. Since I first joined the council in 2016, I have been expressing concern related to both the impact that our annual bonding limits have put on our residents via the tax levy, as well as the need to update various areas of our city's infrastructure that we have not yet updated. By making this decision to use ARPA funding to lower our bonding limit, not only will we lessen the tax burden on our residents, we will also be able to save a substantial amount of money in interest for the project. I believe that making decisions today, such as thinking about how to wisely and prudently use our ARPA funds, while also investing in and supporting the community programs that provide assistance to our residents in need, looking at what work can be delayed, while identifying and improving other types of infrastructure that need to be invested in, and balancing our operating and capital budgets are the types of decisions that we need to make now to help us better navigate future volatility and uncertainty until we are able to begin rolling off past debt. Thank you for your consideration, and I ask you to also vote in support of this item. Maria Regan Gonzalez, Mayor of Ridgefield. All right, are there other council members that would like to enter into the discussion? Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will say, maybe somewhat similarly to Councilmember Hayford-O'Leary's comments, I was initially much more concerned about this after having seen, I know they're still very preliminary, but seen some of the other proposals for how we use the remaining ARPA funds. I feel slightly better in knowing that the only number I'd heard previously is that if we wanted to say yes to all of our proposals, that they vastly exceeded the amount of funding we've actually received. And similarly, with this one-time money, this opportunity, I want to see it invested in something, not just that saves money or lowers a tax levy, but that continues to serve residents. I am still torn about the fact that at the heart of it, it's like if you're buying a house, having a bigger down payment, of course, is going to save you money. That we're saving money over the course of 20 years, and that ultimately I also appreciate the kind of reducing this to like what would it actually save a property owner, and that again not everyone owns this exactly $300,000 home, but it's literally saving 60 cents a month. And I just don't think anyone's going to notice that. I don't think that changes that we face an incredibly difficult financial situation going forward, at least in the short term. And I guess I'm not opposed to moving forward with this motion as is, but think that rather than just saying we're going to do this to save property owners 60 cents a month across the board, I think we should be thinking about could that $100,000 less in debt levy for the next 20 years, could that fund the as the city manager had mentioned in a previous conversation with her, could that fund some of the needed technology subscriptions like Office 365 that our city doesn't have? Could that fund one of the many staff positions in different departments that we've known we need as service needs continue increasing? That I would urge us to think about it in that way, because those needs are not going away. And that I think in many ways the services provided by the city and being able to target those towards areas most needed is a more valuable proposition than giving property owners 60 cents back a month. And so that's one thought I have. I debated how much of a soapbox I want to go on. Our hard financial situation is not caused by or going to be solved by whether we can reduce the average property owner's taxes by $7 a year, or even if we find a way to reduce it $7 a month, that we have a state government, largely because of Republican leadership in the Senate, that's refusing to invest the $9 billion surplus that we have in the basic services, that we have corporations that are not raising wages, that are making record profits and calling it inflation. There are many reasons why people's budgets are tight. I don't think whether we are forced to raise our tax levy by 7.5% instead of 8% is going to make or break that moment. And so in the face of that challenge, that is largely outside our control, again, would just urge us to, rather than doubling down on this idea of underfunding things to keep property taxes or taxes in general as low as possible, that we, as we consider what to do with, if we move ahead with this, the $100,000 a year that saves, as we consider how to use the rest of the ARPA funds, that targeting services and funding toward the residents most in need, and toward our programs we already have that do that, toward the proposals with the ARPA money that do that, to me seems like a much more effective use of government funds in general than trying to provide a extremely marginal discount to the entire city, whether they need it or not, excluding, frankly, the third of our city who rents, who is not going to see their rent go down by 60 cents a month because of this. The last comment I'll make, I know I am preaching at this point, but the last comment I'll make is that I do think, as we look to further proposals, future years bonding, we have invested a lot, bonded a lot in our roads, and they look amazing, and I don't think that was a wrong choice. To me personally, if we choose to move ahead with this and use roughly a third of our ARPA funds on another road project, to me this would I'll be thinking about this as the rest of the ARPA funds should probably not be going towards other road projects, and we may have to delay more of them, given that we have major infrastructure needs in our utilities and in our parks and recreation facilities. And so some of what I'm saying is not asking for comment, but I guess the two pieces I would want to hear other council members' thoughts on are that idea of knowing we are not yet at a place of getting at all specific of what we're using the remainder of the ARPA funds for. Are the other council members who are supporting this, if you are, considering this to be one of the only or potentially the only road infrastructure use of ARPA funds, or does that continue to seem like a high priority need to keep investing in the short term? And then secondly, I guess if you have general thoughts on the various other needs we have for that $100,000 as opposed to just marginally reducing our tax rate.
All right, Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor Supple, or Mayor Pro Tem Supple. I kind of similar to my comments before. I think it is really helpful to to take things out of the abstraction, just like Councilmember Whalen said, to say this is 60 cents a month for a similarly situated household. my understanding of the bonding concerns are not that we're trying to save residents that are homeowners 60 cents a month, but that it preserves our borrowing capacity and our fiscal rating, and that these are one of the many decisions we make to keep our books healthy, which is just one of many decisions, but not, at least as I thought about it, it was not primarily to try and save that money for I think is very well put, 60 cents per house per month. But I was going to say that this is one of the first projects that I ever had a chance to talk to Director Asher about when I first joined the council, and we've been talking about it for as long as I've been engaged in public service in Ridgefield, and a couple of items about this particular short section of road is that for those, and most people in Ridgefield are familiar with the hub, there are utilities and their infrastructure that go underneath the hub parking lot for folks that scratch their head and say, why on earth do we have a third of the hub that doesn't really get used for anything and is not useful, and nobody parks there. Part of the reason for that is because there are utilities that run not parallel with the road, but run underneath the parking lot. And so part of what we're doing here is creating capacity for needed development at the hub. Also, for a lot of the senior residents that live around Ridgefield Lake in that area, it's one of the least accessible parts of Ridgefield that just unfortunately happens to be right next to the largest concentration of seniors, many of whom have significant disabilities, and we have a very accessible walk path on the other side. So it just invites some of our most vulnerable residents to walk through slippery parking lots and on streets, and in ways that we've been talking about ever since I was first a council member here. And so this it was a painful vote to support delaying this project during the pandemic, which I think was absolutely the right thing to do. But I also think that this particular project at this time is really important for a lot of reasons. But also, to be fair to Councilmember Whalen, I do think it's reasonable for us to think about, one, be exceedingly pleased with the leadership of Director Asher in leading us and investing in our infrastructure, but also saying as we look to the future, we have a lot of competing needs and a lot of inflationary costs. Some of those inflationary costs, are frankly punching us in the face right now as we delayed a year and a half, and we have to pay a ton more. And so that's a reality, but also looking at other parts of our city and other priorities for the remaining funds, I think is also really appropriate.
Councilmember Hafer O'Leary.
So I agree with the defense of the project, but I don't know that I need to say a whole lot more about it. I think it is a worthy project, and particularly with the hub redevelopment, and I don't think Councilmember Whalen was questioning the project. Particularly with the hub redevelopment, I think the timing is important of keeping this project moving. I will say, just hindsight being 2020, I do wish that we had a special assessment policy. I think the hub should be contributing to the cost of this. It's unfortunate that they're not, and the taxpayers are covering all of this when it increases their property value. Still, it is ultimately going to be a subsidized project, and it's good that we're facilitating it because it's really important to the future of our city, the future of our tax base. Regarding the 60 cents a month, we haven't set next year's levy yet, so we're not literally buying cost savings, I don't think. I think we're just this is an example and an illustration of what that might look like. I agree with your idea that an idea that we're constantly deprived of money and the only goal is to reduce the tax base and nothing, or the tax burden and nothing else, would be harmful. I see it as harmful at other levels of government. I don't think Ridgefield has really done that, at least most of the time, and I think our excellent investments in our streets and the future of our city show that. So I agree with you that those things are not significant necessarily, but I also think that it's not $100,000 of found money. It's we don't have that $100,000. We don't have a lot more than that $100,000. It's something to work through in our budget discussions, but I I think it's wrong to frame it as we're doing this to save homeowners 60 cents a month. We don't know if we'll save or not, but we are slightly reducing our burden and our problem. And then regarding the comments about the overall use of the ARPA funds, I think I agree with the spirit of what you're saying, but I'm uncomfortable with you sort of, it feels like you're asking us to commit to like no more road funding with that, and I don't know at this point. I think your arguments hold a lot of water, and I think we all realize we spent a lot of money on roads, so I think that's absolutely appropriate for the discussion, but I couldn't say like now I want to commit to like not spending a dime on roads. So otherwise, I do agree with the spirit of what you're saying, especially as it pertains to higher levels of government.
Thank you. It was very helpful to look at the draft that we were sent of all, like if we had unlimited money, this is what we could spend ARPA money on. And I think there were like 12 million in wishes, and we clearly don't have that much. But that was very, very helpful. I think it's fiscally prudent to use ARPA funds on things that are one-time investments instead of getting into a situation where we do fund something that has ongoing. So, because all of a sudden when the ARPA funds are gone, then suddenly we've got to chop a bunch of stuff away. So I do think we need to look at things that are one-time investments, and that would fit this criteria. I do think if we can reduce the interest, that's important, because the way it's looking now, interest rates are going up and inflation's going up. If we do this so that we can get the interest this year, that does save us money. Otherwise, what could happen if we break it into two parts and do part of it this year and part of it next year, then that cost could increase a great deal. And I would rather save the money up front, because then that leaves us more flexibility for when we're choosing those projects that we're going to spend on, because it's money that's saved on the interest so that we have more flexibility in the future. The other thing that was mentioned, people have talked about planning ahead for the hub, but the thing that hasn't been mentioned is as far as if I'm remembering correctly, there's significant flooding in that Ridgefield Lake area and around that area. So when we're redoing that infrastructure, I think part of the design cost is because we had to figure out how to handle all that flood water. And so I think that's significant because we are dealing with that problem. And with climate change, I don't think we're going to have any less of the storm events and less of that water. So I think it's prudent to spend the money on some of that. I did go through looking at the wish list for all the things we could spend our ARPA money on, and I kind of tried to sort it through. And there were some things that were already in our long-term plans for the capital improvement, and there were things that were ongoing expenses that already had tails. And then there were other things that had other possible funding sources, because I know that there's been a lot of work to do things like creating the housing trust fund so that we can use some of the TIF money and the money from the HRA and the EDA to pay for things. So I think there are other creative sources we could use for things. So that, I guess I would prioritize, to answer your questions, things that were directly tied to the pandemic. We have some expenses that were directly because of that, and I think that's what some of this funding is helping to ameliorate. So I think that would be a thing. And I also think we should look at things that increase efficiency and equity. Those would be my criteria of looking at it. So I don't know what I'm going to vote on in the future, but I would be looking for ways to increase efficiency and equity going forward so that we're being good stewards of the taxpayer money, but also things that are directly tied to COVID and don't have any other funding source for them. So I would support the current motion that's been put forward. Councilmember Whalen.
Just a quick comment to echo. I agree, and had talked briefly with the city manager who had brought this up too, that this in particular, I don't know how often this might come up in future road projects, but this in particular does feel like a situation where having an adjacent property owner who is greatly benefiting from it contribute, and whether that's through assessments or I think the other possibility in hindsight that I don't think is, I guess I will ask staff to confirm, I don't think is still possible. But my understanding is that if the hub site redevelops, if it is created into a TIF district of some kind, that some of the TIF money could be used to contribute to costs such as the ones of moving these utilities. Again, it seems like such a specific situation. I don't know that that will come up again, but I would echo the sentiment that, and I guess I don't know if the special districts we've done for like ongoing maintenance, if that is ever an option for some of these projects, but I think figuring out ways when we are improving a primarily commercial corridor that is really going to benefit the local businesses. I mean, there's always the balance. You don't want to push them out of business with extra costs, but yeah. So I guess if staff could comment, my understanding was that TIF option it's much too late for that to make sense in this scenario.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Whalen. We did ask that question, and actually, if Rebecca wants to address it, but my understanding is the timing, because we're issuing these bonds now, we're doing the roadway improvement now, and we're setting up at a later time. We can certainly make Bricks more aware of the benefit that we are providing by spending those costs to move that water line.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Whalen, I'll just add that the stormwater improvements that we're doing help the whole area, not just the hub, but it does help the hub. They will also have a large stormwater challenge to deal with. So I'm guessing they're going to have to, their whole parking lot's probably going to be underground storage, which is not inexpensive. So they'll have their challenges as well.
All right, are there other comments or discussion? All right, well, we have the motion before us to approve the attached resolution providing for the sale of $10 million general obligation bonds, Series 2022A. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've passed that motion. Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to item number 6, and that would go to Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Thank you.
All right, so we'll be considering approving the bid tabulation for the 65th Street Reconstruction Project, authorizing the Mayor Pro Tem and the City Manager to award and execute a contract for construction between the City and Eureka Construction Incorporated for the 65th Street Reconstruction Project in the amount of $10,169,400, and authorize the City Manager to approve contract changes up to $175,000 without further council consideration. Consistent with City Council direction, the Capital Improvement Plan, and the City's Comprehensive Plan, staff have been working towards the construction of the 65th Street Reconstruction Project over the past few years. The 65th Street Construction Project consists of a full road reconstruction to replace the existing deteriorating infrastructure along the 65th Street corridor between the 66th Street Ray Drive intersection and Nicollet Avenue. In addition to the road reconstruct, other improvements along this corridor include pedestrian improvements on Lyndale Avenue and the implementation of a new trail along Ridgefield Lake on the north side of 65th Street. New stormwater infrastructure will be installed to address historical flooding issues in the area and to accommodate any additional runoff that may occur from the redevelopment of the hub property. The existing 18-inch water main that runs through the hub property will be relocated to 65th Street to allow for redevelopment of the hub property. Advertisement for bids. The advertisement for bid was published in the Ridgefield Sun Current and on questcdn.com on March 10th, 2022. Bid opening was held on April 14th, 2022. Copy of the bid tabulation is attached. 5 bids were received, ranging from the low bid of $10,169,400 to a high bid of $12,068,749.72. The lowest responsive and responsible bidder was Eureka Construction Incorporated in the amount of $10,169,400. Following the bid opening and tabulation of bids, it was determined that Eureka Construction was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder and would be awarded the project construction contract. In order for the project to remain on schedule and to avoid delays to construction start, May 2022, it has been advised that the Mayor Pro Tem and City Manager be authorized to award and execute the project construction contract. Does staff have anything to add?
So I have the same question for City Attorney Teachin. Do you want this as 3 separate or all together?
Mayor Pro Tem, with this one, I'm comfortable with one motion since we don't have, unlike land use approvals, we don't have
Yep.
possible amendments, et cetera. So this can all be done with one motion.
Thank you.
All right, I'll go ahead and just make the motion, then we can discuss. I move that we approve the let me actually go to approve the bid tabulation for the 65th Street Reconstruction Project, that we authorize the Mayor Pro Tem and City Manager to award and execute the contract for the construction between the city and Eureka Construction Incorporated for the 65th Street Reconstruction Project in the amount of $10,169,400, and authorize the city manager to approve contract changes up to $175,000 without further city council consideration.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Whalen. Is there any discussion?
I just had a question for Director Asher. I was just curious, the document shows like what's 2022 versus 2023 construction. I know Joe Powers said that might get rearranged. Is the document that's in the packet correct, that the roundabout would happen this year, or is that still delayed?
Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Hayford O'Leary, what happened was we were going to have them do the stormwater in the center this year and then do the two outsides up to Nicollet and around next year. But the contractors, as they were reviewing the package, said they were not going to be able to get the big box culvert this year. So we did switch. So the plan is, what we're expecting the contractor to do is to actually rebuild the sections on the outside. So from Nicollet in, probably near the hub somewhere, and then around by the SA there.
Okay, so the graphic is out of date, the 2022.
Oh.
I think it just shows like a split at the railroad tracks and everything west of the railroad is 2022.
Oh, yeah, then the
but-
graphic,
Okay,
it's outdated, sorry.
just curious. It doesn't affect my opinion of the motion.
So to the box culvert, is that because of supply chain issues or? Okay. All right, Councilmember Whalen.
I'll just add that regardless of my comments to the last one, I am really excited about this project, particularly that having biked through this area, especially that railroad crossing, is really rough. It's due for an upgrade. All of the accessibility things that Councilmember Troutman mentioned, I agree with as well, and certainly echo Mayor Pro Tem's comments about the stormwater issues only going to be more severe as we continue to see more heavy rainfall events. So this is really important. I think it is a really essential infrastructure investment, and I look forward to the finished project when it's ready.
One last comment I wanted to make of excitement that with the associated restripe of Lindale, I believe these are the second to last city streets that are 4-lane undivided, and the only remaining one will be West 76th. Yeah. Well, 4-lane undivided specifically, yeah. So I think that's really cool. This is a dangerous type of road. It was probably never needed in this location, but particularly given the context, I'm excited to see that 4-lane undivided go away and us to continue to have more safe and complete streets.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, hearing none, we have the motion before us. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we have approved the recommended action. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to item number 7. Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Let me get, does the classic zoom way out to see the entire 65th Street plan. So this item is to consider the appointment of Cole Huey to the Planning Commission with a term expiring January 31st, 2023. As of March 22nd, a Planning Commission position became vacant as a commissioner applied for and was appointed to the HRA, our Housing and Redevelopment Authority. During the December of 2021 and January of 2022 recruitment period for the commissions, multiple residents submitted applications listing preference for the Planning Commission, but were not selected due to not enough positions. Council ranked their top choices for the Planning Commission and came to a consensus for appointment. Staff then confirmed that the potential candidate is still interested in being considered for the position. And so I'm guessing staff does not have anything to add. So then I would make a motion to appoint Cole Huey to the Planning Commission with a term expiring January 31st, 2023, as it is a midterm appointment.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments or questions?
Just to say welcome to Cole, and I thought he did a great job in the interview, so I'm excited that we agree upon this candidate.
Yeah, I was just going to add that one of the things the several planning commissioners mentioned before decisions is going out to look at the site, and Cole did just a personal goal of running or walking every street in Ridgefield, and so he has seen them all. It will be recognizable when it's time to go check out where a new project is coming in. So one of the many reasons excited to have him on our planning commission.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? And welcome to Cole. Next, we'll move on to the city manager's report.
Nothing to report tonight, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you. Claims and payroll.
I would move claims and payroll.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Troutman and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to approve claims and payroll. Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we've approved the claims and payroll. Next, we'll move on to hats off to hometown hits. Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you. I want to lift up, we got the opportunity, I know our staff regularly interact with other city staff to see what's working in other places, get good ideas. I got to go along with Director Markle and blanking on his title right now, but Chris Link from Public Works to go check out a bike park in, oh gosh, I think it was Woodbury. But it was a fun experience, and just a shout out to some of the partners that are working with the Community Services Commission to consider bringing that to Ridgefield. I know we've got a work session coming up, but just was fun to see the facility, but also to see the care that staff put into researching new ideas, trying to innovate and figure out what works best for our community.
Thank you. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
First, again, to say the Ridgefield Foundation fundraiser is tomorrow. I believe you can even buy tickets at the door if you haven't in advance. Do you know, Mary?
I believe so. So it's May 12th is I think
Oh,
that's
sorry, you're right. It
Thursday.
was Thursday, not tomorrow. Thank you for clarifying that. So don't show up tomorrow. Yeah, but it is at Woodlake Center. I will be there. I imagine other folks will be there as well. And then a personal note I just want to share, and I'm going to make her watch the video later, is it is my grandma's 100th birthday today.
Wow.
And 68 years in Ridgefield, so out of her century. So happy birthday, Grandma.
And happy birthday to your grandmother from all of us.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I just wanted to take my hats off and say thank you to our community development staff. This morning, I had the opportunity to talk to a group of realtors who are interested in learning more about Ridgefield and what an incredible place it is. And it just gave me an opportunity to reflect publicly and with a group of several dozen people interested in our community about what we've done to make things affordable and accessible, and the amenities that we have. Director Asher left, but the investments that we've made in our infrastructure, I think, really put us in an incredible position as we compare ourselves with other communities. And so it was it was an honor to be able to share the good work of our staff. As elected, we take credit for the great work that folks work so hard on and so many years on. And so I don't want to say that publicly and not just take an opportunity to thank not just our directors but all our staff for an incredible amount of work. That when we talk to folks, when I knock on doors in Ridgefield and I ask people what's going well, what's not going well, the number one answer is I love Ridgefield. And so for everybody who makes that possible, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to do a shout out to the seniors at Ridgefield High School that put their art on display at the community center. So Friday night was the, like the kickoff event, and they had an open house, and the art's going to be up at the community center that's near Augsburg Park through the end of June, and there are phenomenal artworks there. And one thing that I found out that they have like an all-conference art show, and they choose 4 best of show entries, and Ridgefield had 3 out of the 4 entries for best of show out of the whole conference art show. So that says something about the quality of the art that the students are putting forward. So hats off to all the artists. I also wanted to thank all the people that came out to Ridgefield Lake on Saturday and were picking up trash and cleaning up the area. And staff provided like gloves and grabbers and things like that. And they are happy to provide that again. If anybody else wants to clean up other parks, you can contact John Evans. His email would be jevans@ridgefieldmin.gov. So, you know, if you have a community group that wants to get together, the staff will facilitate and give you the equipment. And then finally, I wanted to do a hats off to Christina Hadid Gonzalez. She's the Director of Student Support Services at the Ridgefield Public Schools. And she was the Park Nicollet Foundation 2022 Community Service Award winner for her work to improve health in our community. And she helped to launch and oversee the Park Nicollet Health Center that's attached to the high school. And so that has done a number of things to help keep our community more healthy. And I just wanted to say hats off to her as well. With that, I believe we have completed all of our business and we stand adjourned. Thank you.